Evil is a force. It is an influence in the cosmos, an agency equal to or perhaps even greater than its antithesis. There are two sides in this eternal struggle, one light and the other dark. You might find evil's works reprehensible, yet to those whose hearts belong to corruption, good deeds are equally deplorable. Understand, there is no redemption, only treason against the side you were born to serve. Good, evil, chaos, and law, it is all necessary. Yet you sit upon your towers, speaking as if you would be the ones to strike the blow, to bring the cosmos into balance. But where atop the layers of eternity will you sit, if I were not here to keep the balance of divine alignment? You have no right to lecture me, no right to stand and preach of goodness. You have no concept of the depravity of ruin, or the will it takes to keep this thread from splitting into ruination. If I am to choose this evil, lesser, greater, I will make my choice, conviction steady, for I am the savior of the cosmos, the only being with the will it requires. I have a proposal for you, he began, his voice even, commanding. You wish to see the law upheld, but you do not care to witness its rancor consequences, the judgment of the wicked, the screams of the damned. You demand order, but shun its cost. A hush fell over the gathering. So, he continued, to preserve your delicate sensibilities, my followers and I will take our project elsewhere. We will build a perfect hell for you, one that you may feign from, ignore entirely, but which still serves your design. He turned and pointed to a cold, empty land on the edge of the multiverse. We shall put it there. The gods, almost in unison, breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, yes, said several, nodding. You must move your hell there, forthwith. Nothing would please me more, said Asmodeus with a gracious bow. From his outstretched hand, the ruby rod of power flashed into existence. But first, we must make a pact. A pact? Moradin's gravelly voice cut through the chamber. Suspicion lay thick in every syllable. Yes, indeed, Asmodeus replied smoothly. With a wave of his hand, a parchment unfurled into the air, its edges glowing faintly, its letters dancing and twisting in infernal script. This agreement specifies the fate of damned souls. In exchange for our labor, it allows us to draw arcane power from the condemned so that we might maintain our strength and continue to enforce your laws, far removed from your grace. I'm not sure I like the sound of that, Moradin muttered. Understandable, soothed Asmodeus. But consider, once exiled to this place, my kind can no longer draw divine magic from you. We will be severed from your light. You would not wish us to become gods in our own right, would you? The silence grew heavier. That possibility, an independent pantheon of wrathful, embittered angels, was unthinkable. Assuredly not, Moradin now looking with content. Then sign, Asmodeus said, smiling just enough to show the faintest glint of teeth. It a lesser measure, one that ensures we serve the law without blemishing your heavens. One by one, the gods of law and good placed their sigils upon the document. Thus was forged the pact primeval. And with its sealing, Asmodeus, Mephistopheles, and Dispater fell back, descended, into the realm now named Bator, accompanied by the Erinyes, their fallen kin clad in flame-kissed armor, wings with embers trailing from their backs. The land was a vast grey wasteland of cracked stone and empty sky. What have you gotten us into? Mephistopheles muttered, brushing dust from his crimson cloak. This place has nothing, Dispater grumbled, already pacing. Just wait, said Asmodeus. I will show you how we remake paradise. Decades passed in mortal time. The heavens basked in new peace, unmarred by the grim angels who once served among their ranks. The halls of order shone with unclouded brilliance. But then, the souls stopped coming. At first, it was a trickle, then a tide. The number of righteous departed dwindled, and prayers from mortal priests spoke of growing corruption in the hearts of mortals. Temples became echo chambers. The gods of law reconvened, their concern growing sharp. They formed a delegation, Hieronius, Moradin, Torm, and others, and set off for Bator. What they found was not the desolate plain they had beheld before. Bator had been shaped, layered and carved into 9 titanic realms of agony and dominion. Bronze fortresses rose from blood-soaked rivers. Iron cities howled beneath burning skies. Colossal towers of bone speared the firmament. Countless souls toiled, twisted by torment, reshaped first into larval creatures, then into devils, soldiers, viziers, tormentors, and lords. The gods were horrified. "What goes on here?" demanded Hieronius, sword drawn, his face pale with divine rage. "You gave us the right to harvest souls," Asmodeus said calmly, floating above the throne that crowned Nessus, the 9th and deepest layer. "To rebuild our realm, to enforce your law. We have since refined the process. You were meant to punish transgressions, not encourage them," cried Hieronius, lightning dancing along his blade. "Oh, but we do both," Asmodeus replied, with that same thin smile. And then he held aloft the parchment once more, the Pact Primeval, its words shimmering anew, now written in the pain of 1,000,000 souls. "Read the fine print," he said, his voice like velvet over daggers. "Thus began the eternal spiral, the devil's subtle whispers upon the material world, their temptation wrapped in contracts, their seduction veiled in the language of law. And when mortals fell, their descent was legal, predetermined, signed and sanctioned. The gods of law had bartered away damnation, and Asmodeus, he had simply enforced what had already been agreed. In ancient times, as the blood war raged, the angels of law and good that dwelt on Mount Celestia issued a decree, accusing Asmodeus of terrible crimes. Outraged by such claims, the Lord of the 9 Hells petitioned for the right to answer the charges before his accusers. The angels, although shocked at his impudence, accepted his petition and agreed to hear the bargain he proposed. Both sides, he suggested, would present their case to Primus, leader of the Modrons. As a creature of absolute law, Primus could be trusted to issue a fair and impartial verdict. Asmodeus drafted a contract to seal the deal, and the angels, after carefully scrutinizing the terms, agreed to the trial. When he testified before Primus, Asmodeus attributed his actions to the dictates of law and the survival of the cosmos. He admitted that he swayed mortals to evil, but he and his minions never breached a contract and explained the terms clearly. Had they not obeyed the rule of law in doing so? Was it not mortal ambition, rather than infernal deception, that led so many souls astray? Asmodeus also pointed out that the souls harvested from the material plane went on to serve in the infernal legions that repel the endless tide of the abyss. Were not such souls put to good use against the demonic hordes, a power that, if unchecked, would scour the universe of all lawfulness and goodness? He further asserted that he was bound to the rules and traditions of the 9 Hells, compelled to adhere to law and to maintain the devil's trafficking in souls. If he violated those laws, he would be no better than the demons he fought. Mortals who refused a devil's offer were left alone, in accordance with the law. Those who struck deals with his followers and then somehow turned the contracts against the devils were also freed from their debts. A contract is the law, and the law is a contract. Primus weighed Asmodeus's words and listened patiently as angel after angel testified to his crimes. Hours turned to days, and days into weeks, as more and more of his sins entered the court record. Even Primus's patience had its limits, and in time, the remaining angels who were eager to testify were told that only a few more would be allowed to speak. A brawl broke out when one angel, Zariel, pushed her way to the front and demanded to be heard. As the scuffle turned into a battle, Asmodeus looked on with a smirk. In the end, Primus declined to issue a definitive judgment. He rebuked the angels for their descent into infighting, but didn't punish Asmodeus for his evil ways. He did, however, order Asmodeus to forever carry a mighty artifact, the Ruby Rod, that would guarantee his adherence to law. The artifact, which has remained at his side ever since, grants him and his underlings the right to enter into contracts with mortals for their souls, but unleashes an inescapable punishment upon any devil that breaches such a contract. Asmodeus wishes for absolute dominion over the cosmos. Under his watch, he believes the universe would take on a pristine, perfect state, with every living creature assigned a place in the infernal hierarchy. Wars would end, and every creature would have a purpose to fulfill. The universe would be a utopia, at least as Asmodeus views such a thing. Of course, as he sees it, he is the only being with the charisma, strength, and insight necessary to shepherd in this ideal future. His rivals are inferiors who, if left to their own devices, will turn the cosmos into a demon-infested maelstrom. The powers of good are sentimental fools, too delicate and soft to do what must be done. In his mind, he has been chosen by the universe to protect it from annihilation. If Asmodeus was any less capable, his arrogance would have led to his undoing long ago. Yet still, he sits atop his throne, having thwarted every conspiracy mounted against him. He once walked into the lair of one of his enemies in Mount Celestia and survived using nothing more than his words and wits. Even the most ardent enemies must grudgingly admit that his skill and competence are unparalleled. Unlike the other lords of the Nine, he has no quota of souls to kill. Any soul recruited by any denizen of the Nine Hells is also pledged in his name, and a cult dedicated to any other devil is also dedicated to him. Because he doesn't need to spend his time courting mortals, he concentrates on manipulating demigods and beings of similar station. Occasionally, he lures such a being into a contract and adds a new, unique devil to the ranks of hells. His most recent being, Zariel, a former angel. His supposed daughter, Glazia, is thought by some scribes to be a godlike entity of unknown origin. Two paladins stood at the edge of a frost-cloaked chamber, their boots crunching against the glass-like ice of Cania, the eighth layer of the Hells. Their breath misted in the air as they passed through the gloomy, frigid wasteland, swords drawn, hearts beating in perfect time to the hymn of their divine mission. They had passed through fire, wrath, treachery, and poison to stand here, in the domain of Mephistopheles himself. They thought they were close. One layer remained, Nessus, the pit, the end of all things. However, they still had the eighth to contend with, and he was waiting for them. The Archdevil stood, tall, dead, white eyes against his long, straight, black hair and a cape as dark as the deepest void, draped in sapphire robes that shimmered, a silver clasp shaped like a thorned rose glinting at his throat. In his hand, he held not a weapon but a parchment, long, pale, and trailing runes that shifted like ice fractals in moonlight. A contract. He looked up at the paladins and smiled, not with cruelty, but with something gentler. Pity, perhaps. This, he said, his voice calm and smooth as wind across the glacier, is your salvation. One of them then charged, roaring some half-remembered name of a god. The other followed more cautiously, blade trembling but eyes fierce. Neither made it far. The charging paladin froze mid-air, suspended by an unseen force, limbs locked, breath halted. The other's prayer caught in his throat as Mephistopheles turned toward him, meeting his eyes with a gaze of frost-bitten stillness. A mere glance, no incantation, no gesture, just the weight of a mind that had outthought archangels and seduced the laws of magic themselves. You should have stayed in the sun, Mephistopheles murmured. And then, softly, the Archduke spoke, not to them, but around them, into the cold itself, into the bones of Cania, into their own memories. "You wish to reach the pit," he said, "to walk through my realm with fire in your lungs and righteousness on your lips." You intended to confront him, the Lord below all lords, the architect of your very notion of evil. He shook his head slowly, as though chastising a child for attempting to read a book upside down. "You do not even understand what you meant to face." There was no fire in his tone, no arrogance, just clarity, the cold certainty of a being who knew. "They call me many things: schemer, liar, frost-born deceiver. But the one that pleases me most? Witness. For I saw it happen. I saw him fall. It began with the pact, of course, that beautiful thing, so clean and oh so precise, a symphony of clauses and contingencies, penned in divine arrogance and signed with a celestial cowardice. They asked Asmodeus to do what none of them had the stomach for, to punish evil, to uphold the balance. And he agreed, so willingly, so graciously, even generously. But they did not like what they saw in the mirror afterward. No, they could not stomach what they'd allowed. Law, it turns out, is only divine when it isn't covered in blood. And so, how righteous of them to cast him down. The very hands that placed the crown of justice upon his brow became fists, and they hurled him from the heavens like a divine refuse. I remember the sky splitting, not breaking, splitting. A quiet rift, delicate as a sigh. Through it came not a scream but a force, pressure so vast it became a force of creation. And then, Asmodeus. He fell through the plains like a blade through parchment. There were no layers of hell yet, no Dis, no Phlegethos, no Cania for me to rule. Just a barren stretch, an unclaimed void. But as he fell, the land tore open to receive him, to shape itself around his agony. Each wound he took from that descent was a law etched into the bedrock. Every scream an edict, every drop of divine ichor a binding clause. And as he fell through Bator, he shaped it, sculpting it with his pain. He made this prison beautiful. When he reached the bottom, when the fall could go no deeper, I descended myself. Yes, I had the sense even then to follow brilliance. I found him lying in the pit, skin riven with molten wounds, his robes in tatters, his mouth curled into something between a smile and a blade. The earth still trembled around him, as if unsure whether to cradle him or flee. He looked at me, through me, really, and said only, "Now it begins." They think he suffers. Let them think it. The wounds, yes, they weep. They bleed fire and law and pain. But what those gods up there, within their halls of Celestia, do not understand, what even most devils fail to grasp, is that he chooses to keep them, at least for now. Each wound is a reminder, not of defeat, of the cost to keep the demons of chaos and law in perfect balance, of true synchroneity. I have made myself in that image. Elegant, yes, polite, controlled. But beneath every word is a hook. Behind every smile, a scheme. There are many who think that to rule hell is to be loud or cruel or mad. No, to rule hell, truly rule it, is to understand it. That is what I have learned from him. Not from his decrees, though they are flawless, but from his confidence, of his divine will, from the stillness behind his eyes when a soul signs away its eternity, thinking it has won. Asmodeus never raises his voice. He doesn't need to. He built a throne out of the fall itself, a pit that pulls all ambition toward it. The deeper you try to climb, the more you realize the walls were written by him. No plan could fool it, and to think you, in your feeble mortality, could change the outcome of our divine design is pathetic. Yes, I serve him. Of course I do. But not out of fear. Fear is for the damned. I serve him because I see the truth. He is not the prisoner of hell. He is its architect, but one day I will take it from him, as it is mine, by right. But for now, every time his wounds bleed upon the stone, I see the rose that blooms from pain. And I see that in my mind, true beauty. A balance of the tyranny, of something those angels within the heavens can never understand. That the demons, they care not for morality, only their inescapable hunger. It matters not what methods we need to achieve to take control, as our design is the only one that brings success. The silence lingered for a moment longer, cold, breathless, absolute. Then Mephistopheles moved. He stepped forward, his hands drifting like smoke over the two frozen paladins. Simple inevitability. His fingers traced invisible sigils in the air, and with a final, whispered phrase, in no tongue spoken by mortals, their bodies slackened. Not a mark marred their skin, not a wound had been inflicted, but their eyes black and motionless. Their souls were gone. With a practiced flick of his wrist, the Archduke of Cania summoned forth a small coin made of infernal iron. It gleamed faintly, as if lit from within by two flickering flames. The faces of the paladins shimmered upon its surface, frozen in silent, confused realization. Soul coins, Mephistopheles murmured. How quaint a name for such a divine currency. He examined the coin for a moment, admiring the twin sparks within. Then, with a faint curl of his fingers, he wrapped it in a silken strand of conjured parchment and sealed it with his personal sigil, an intricate rune of ice and logic, crowned with a single black rose. Later, in the deepest vaults of Nessus, before the throne of the pit, Mephistopheles stood once more. He approached with a flourish. He moved like an artist, placing the final piece upon his masterwork. Asmodeus waited. He sat at the heart of hell, upon a throne carved from the oldest stone that still bore the memory of his fall. His wounds bled quietly, as they always had. Crimson lines traced his skin like canyons of power, and yet he was beautiful, regal, untouched by time, eternal in agony and design. Mephistopheles bowed with the grace of one who knew that the Lord of Hell's perfection deserved recognition. "My lord," he said, voice as calm as falling ash, "two souls, knights of the upper flame, brimming with purpose, chosen to strike at the heart of your dominion. They thought to reach you by blade and prayer. They had made their way through 7 of the layers. Impressive, but ultimately to no avail." He unwrapped the parchment and held the coin aloft in both hands. But in their final moment, they learned. Asmodeus said nothing. He only smiled, and Mephistopheles, ever the scholar of Hell's quiet power, let that silence crown the moment like a scepter of ash and gold. He set the coin into the firelit alcove at the foot of the throne, a gift, a tribute, a lesson. And then he turned, back to Cania, back to the ice, back to his giant laboratories and testing grounds, where immense quantities of arcane energy were released. And as he left, a devilish smile encompassed his regal face. Time passed. Eons within the mortal world. In the depths of Nessus, beneath the weight of countless chasms and flame, a fallen angel met her destiny. The infernal sky of Nessus glowed with veins of smouldering crimson, lighting the halls of Malsheem in an eternal imitation of sunset. Beautiful, deadly, and unchanging. The walls whispered secrets in infernal, etched by no hand, but by the will of law itself. At the heart of it all, upon a throne not built but declared, sat Asmodeus, Lord of the 9 Hells, clothed in grandeur and authority, the kind that gods themselves must acknowledge, if not bow to. Before him, the heavy doors groaned open, releasing a gust of charred air from the world above. She entered, broken. Zariel, once a solar of Celestia, once a blazing general of heaven's armies, once a hope incarnated, now stumbled forward with her head unbowed, though her body betrayed the weight she bore. Her armor was shattered and stained with the blood of mortals, devils, and demons alike. One eye was swollen shut, her left wing bent at an impossible angle, yet she stood tall in that ruinous chamber. Asmodeus did not rise, not yet. He regarded her as one might admire a fallen star, the silence stretched long, broken only by the low thrum of chained magic echoing beneath the floor. "You have done well," he said at last. Zariel spat blood on the black stone. "Well, I led a doomed charge. The Hell Riders are ashes. The banner I raised is in the dirt, and I wake beneath your gaze. Say what you wish to say, Archfiend." He chuckled, a sound smooth as silk dragged over steel. "You are angry. Good." She frowned. "You think me pathetic, beaten, but I will never relent." "No," he said, slowly rising from his throne. "I see your value, and in it I am impressed, young one." As he approached, the chamber shifted. It always did, in his presence. Time bent slightly. Space retreated, shy and obedient. Asmodeus walked the floor with the calm of inevitability, and with a wave of his hand, an image filled the air before them. A conjured illusion, a panorama of the cosmos. The plane spread like a great wheel, the stars flickering with divine fire. At the hub, the 9 hells pulsed with a heart of iron and flame. "I see you as my new champion. You wish for war, but you may ask why you should become my champion. Let me tell you first who I am." His voice grew deeper, but never louder. It was not meant to convince. It was to reveal. "I am the undisputed master of the 9 hells. Not one devil draws breath or blade without my sanction. Even the gods who linger in this realm give me proper due, or they burn for it." He gestured to the first layer, Avernus, a scorched wasteland of rusted swords and broken sieges. The skies above it were torn by war engines, fireballs, and blood-soaked wings. Archdevils conspire. They must, for it is their nature, but none dare move openly. They fear my knowledge, for I know their secrets. I know who they trust, and I know that trust serves me. Zariel watched as the illusion bled into another scene. The material plane, temples in shadow, kings with devils at court, warlocks speaking his name in the dark, children whispering prayers they did not understand. My reach goes beyond hell. I have cultists in every realm, in every caste, from kings in silken robes to peasants muttering curses. They all serve me, even if they do not know it yet. The ruby rod appeared in his hand, shimmering with unnatural gravity, anchored to reality by his presence. Crafted from the heart of a single ruby, forged in Tiamat's venom, and polished with the tears of countless angels who chose to break. You may ask how I came to wield such a weapon, why it matters at all. Some tales from the mortal world have said that I crafted this from a sliver of the shard of evil, which crafted the abyss itself. That somehow I used this to kill the reigning leader of hell at the time. If you wish to believe this tale, you can, my dear child. I have also heard that in the pink flump within Waterdeep, I am obliged to keep the staff, a symbol for all my followers to maintain their creeds and pacts with the utmost faith, or wrath and ruin may end their existence. The truth, dear Zariel, is this. It does not matter which tale lies true. The result is the same. I am the only being with the knowledge, will and focus to still the tide of the abyss. The one with the guile to do what it must take, to continue to fight in the everlasting war so that existence may still stand. Zariel's gaze was steady now, but her lips were tight. All of this, and still you come to me. Why? Asmodeus' expression grew sharper, colder. The mirage faded, Only flame remained. Flame and war. Because you are worthy. He stepped close. She did not flinch. You charged Avernus not for your own glory, but because the heavens refused to act. Because their righteousness, without the courage to move, is cowardice, and you could bear it no longer. And yet, Asmodeus said, stepping beside her, you did not fall. You were buried beneath the weight of your own passion. A lesser soul would have shattered, but you, child, you endured. He reached out with a pact made of oaths, war, and iron. I do not offer forgiveness. I offer war. War without an end. Your blade will never dull. Your cause will never wither. In Avernus, you will be judge, fury, and flame. An Archduchess of Avernus, Lord of the First. Her lips parted slightly. I will never see the high heavens again. No, he said, but your convictions will guide you to ascension, to a purpose greater than any you could have in the upper planes. There was silence. Zariel stood there, her breath ragged, the ghosts of her failure clawing at the edge of her mind. And then she looked toward the illusion of Avernus again, where endless battle raged like a heartbeat. A place where justice was a fire, and fury could rule without an apology. Slowly she knelt. Then, let the world know, she said, that Zariel rides again. Asmodeus smiled, the ruby rod pulsing in his grasp. Then rise, champion of Avernus. In a flash of infernal flame, her broken form was remade. A halo of fire burned atop her head. Her once fine skin was scorched. Her angelic wings turned to leather. Her fallen hand had been replaced now by a flail. Eyes of burning judgment. No longer a general of light, but a conqueror of hell. And thus began the second war of Zariel, a fallen angel. Yes, but as the hand of Asmodeus and the fury of the first hell. A savior of the cosmos, and Asmodeus's lieutenant. Asmodeus, Lord of the Ninth, supreme master of the 9 hells, the true god of evil. And so it was that the greatest deception ever enacted bore the seal of celestial approval. The gods returned to their heavens, stained with a shame they dared not speak aloud. The pact. Primeval could not be undone, for to do so would unravel the very fabric of law they were sworn to uphold. In silence, they bore the knowledge that their desire for purity had birthed a realm of torment. And in the depths of Baator, Asmodeus sat upon a throne, understanding one true fact. The planes exist in a precarious state. A seemingly small event could echo across the worlds and tip the balance. His legions stem the tide of the abyss. Does he wish to see his version of the multiverse at play? Absolutely. Does he care about a single mortal life? Not a chance. But what he embodies is the will to act. And as he looked out over the 9 layers he had forged, from ash, oaths, and his own divine blood, he whispered to the darkness he had created, I will perform the first duty of law, to destroy chaos. We blackened ourselves so they could remain golden. We uphold our laws, not break them. Mortals now choose between paradise, of the rightful action. We are the dispatchers of punishment, for that is our duty. If I am to choose this evil, lesser, greater, I will make my choice. Convictions steady, for I am the savior of the cosmos, the only being with the will it requires.